put your finger in someone's face at an Emily's List event once you find out they're with the Teamsters, and you say, you better get on board or else. And then you come before us, you want to dictate what you're going to answer, and then you leave 20 minutes before it's over. That's a problem.
Are you on? Which side are you on?
Sean O'Brien has been kind of making the rounds on different podcasts and stuff like that, and he recently was on Tucker Carlson's show. And you know, I'm of a few different minds about some of the stuff that you know, I think directionally, I think that a lot of the stuff that he said there, you know, the critiques of the Democratic Party, was right as far as their kind of abandonment of people. But I do also, you know, there's a certain level of frustration that I have when he goes around and does this song and dance about the Democratic Party not being sufficient, when he does not also educate people who are listening to him about the Republican Party. And like everything that he says, every appearance that he gives, directionally, he is negative towards the Democrats, which is fine, and that makes sense. But he is also positive about the Republicans, which is, I think, like less less good. And so here's one of the first clips that he has on the pension thing, you know, because
it even got to a point, he showed up at our building prior to the election, and we had a bipartisan meeting in the hallway of the IBT, and it was attended by a lot of Republican senators, a lot of Republican congressmen, because look, our goal is to work across the aisle to solve problems.
Yeah.
He walks in with his, you know, the Capitol Police, who do a great job, walks in late, and he sticks his crooked finger in my face, and he says, "I fixed your pensions." I said, "You should have. You broke them." And we get into it pretty hard. And, you know, he starts like yelling at me. I go, "Buddy, listen, there's only one guy that can yell at me. We buried him 12 years ago. I go, "You want to get into this right here, right now? We'll get into it."
You're talking about your dad.
Yeah, I'm talking about my dad, right? And so Schumer's like, "We fixed your pension." I'm like, "Yeah? I'm going to name the things you haven't done for us."
About, you know, what he's referring to there is the deregulation from Jimmy Carter, right, in the trucking industry that completely destroyed the Teamsters, you know, presence in the industry, destroyed a lot of jobs. Like you said, 400,000 Teamster jobs gone because of the deregulation in the trucking industry that Joe Biden, you know, signed on to, and also, you know, was passed under Jimmy Carter. And so, like, yes, that's, you know, when people were talking about, you know, oh, the Teamsters are not being grateful because of the restoration of their pensions, like, that totally makes sense that Sean O'Brien is going out there and he's like, yeah, because the Democrats, like, screwed it up. Like, it was their fault. Like, why should I kind of prostrate myself at their feet? Because they fixed the problem that they caused 40 years ago. And in some cases, even though it's been 40 years ago, it's literally the same people, Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer included, right? So and so when people talk about how there was such a clear, like, benefit for the Teamsters from the Biden presidency, you know, that has to be reckoned with. And also, saving the pensions still doesn't actually completely fix the problem, right? Because it was not as if under Jimmy Carter they passed a rule like pensions in the trucking industry are bad. We're gonna make them worse, right? That wasn't what happened. They deregulated the trucking industry and they made all of the jobs bad, and all of the jobs disappeared, and all of the jobs became these private, independent owner operator terrible jobs. And so that is still the case, even though there are some Teamster long-haul truck drivers that have had their pensions saved, and I'm sure they're happy for that. There's still tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people that are driving trucks that, but for that deregulation that Joe Biden supported, would have good-paying union jobs with a pension, with health care, and all of that other stuff, right? And so, like, Yeah, that totally makes sense. Like, screw the Democrats for sure. And it is, you know, kind of just like Chris was talking about how we need to steel ourselves against positive only news. We need to steel ourselves against not being willing to criticize folks who are ostensibly on our side, who want us to believe they are on our side. And so there needs to be a lot of education about the fact that, yes, Biden saved the Teamsters pensions, but that was a problem that was caused by Democrats and Republicans, but Democrats were in charge when it happened, right? And so that's, you know, I really don't have any notes on that part of it, frankly. We go into, they start talking about Harris, and again, I think, you know, generally speaking, I'm mostly in agreement with this section that I'm about to play. There's a couple of quibbles that I have and some extra context that I'm going to bring in, but let's go ahead and play this where he's talking to Tucker Carlson about Kamala Harris.
So we give 16 questions 2 weeks in advance, the same 16 questions to each candidate. So, you know, RFK answered all 16 questions. Probably most of them didn't answer them how we would like them to answer them, but they answered them. Joe Biden came in and he answered 5 of them. Donald Trump answered all 16. And then when Biden drops out of the race, but prior to Biden dropping out of the race, he's in the race around June or May. One of my vice presidents, a woman named Joan Corey out of my local, she sits on our general executive board, was at an event with Vice President Harris. And, you know, they're going through the line to get the picture, and Joan introduces herself to Vice President Harris, says, "I'm Joan Corey. I'm on the general executive board for the Teamsters." She goes, "Teamsters? You better get on board. You better get on board. Better get on board soon." Says it to my vice president.
To her face?
To her face. So she comes back. We have the meeting the next day.
Damn.
And she tells me this.
I thought I was arrogant. That's really arrogant.
So she tells me this. So I call up Marty Walsh. He wasn't the Secretary of Labor, but, you know, he was pushing hard for us to make the endorsement. I'm like, let me ask you a question, Marty. Excuse my French. Who does this fucking lady think she is? Like, if I want to support from any organization, I am not going to point my finger in someone's face and say, you better get on board or else. But that's the attitude of this whole party. So fast forward, she finally agrees to come after we were putting pressure on her, you know, basically, because I was doing interviews all over the place saying, we haven't got invited to the DNC. You know, they haven't accepted our invitation for her to come to a roundtable, so she comes to the roundtable. Same format, same questions. Rank and file members are asking her questions just like they asked every other candidate. And they were trying to negotiate with us. She only wants to answer 3 questions. We're like, there's 16 questions here. So she answers 3 of them. And on the 4th question, one of her operatives or one of her staff slips a note in front of me. This will be the last question. And it was 20 minutes earlier than the time that it was going to end.
Come on.
100%.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
Pause it there for a second, because, like, why do that? Right? I mean, if you want to be president of the United States, and this is a huge organization, 1.3 million Teamsters, I mean, represents, like, you know, what is that? Like, 1/3% of the U.S. population right there. I mean, that's a big group of people. When you think about all of the family members and stuff, that's a lot of people. And you should want to try to answer the questions of the membership, right? And respond to the concerns that the union has. And also, you know, one of the things that the Teamsters talked about, why they didn't endorse anybody. One of the things that they mentioned was the internal polling, but also the responses to these questions. He said that neither Trump nor Harris promised to keep on Lena Khan at the FTC. Neither Trump nor Harris promised not to do what Biden did in 2022 when he stopped the railroad workers from striking. Neither of them promised to do that. And so, you know, and then on top of not making those commitments, like just not answering all of the questions, not giving an hour of your time to the International Brotherhood of Teamsters is frankly, you know, just political malpractice. It's insane to think that you should just get their endorsement without any work. And so it's just totally political malpractice, and there's really not an excuse for it, right? Why was she not willing to answer 16 questions from the Teamsters? There's no excuse for that. Let's listen to the rest of it.
You know, you're there trying to get our support. And her declaration on the way out was, I'm going to win with you or without you.
She thought that or said it out loud?
She said it out loud.
That's insane.
So
that's crazy behavior, actually, if you think about it.
It was insane behavior, which at that point in time, I knew she was going to lose. Now, that's just my unqualified opinion. I got a gut instinct, and I'm like,
well, you turned out to be right.
Someone this arrogant, forget anything else, but you put your finger in someone's face at an Emily's List event once you find out they're with the Teamsters, and you say, you better get on board or else. That's a problem. And then you come before us, you don't answer the question, you want to dictate what you're going to answer, and then you leave 20 minutes before it's over. And the one difference between all the candidates that came...
Okay, yeah, hold on. Let's pause here for a second. Because now, there was a lot of conversation about that on Twitter, and about how, like, wow, if Sean O'Brien was sitting on this before the election was over, then, you know, I mean, he was really, you know, basically giving a gift to the Democrats by not being public with this information. And now, you know, in a sense that's true, but also, you know, I think there's a more self-interested reason that he wouldn't go public with that before the election, is because if he goes public, and, you know, I mean, this is clearly, you know, he doesn't think that Kamala Harris is going to be a political player in the future. And so there's no price to pay for further harming her reputation. But if he came out, you know, swinging and talked about how this, which if it happened as Sean O'Brien said, and I'll get to that in a second, if it happened as Sean O'Brien said, is genuinely a real affront to unions generally, I think, frankly. But also, you know, going public with that kind of stuff and making an enemy of the potential president, and she could have won, you know, is not something that you know, you would do willy-nilly, right? So it's not as if going public with this information before the election would have had zero cost to him. So, you know, but nevertheless, you know, I mentioned that if it happened as he said it did, because there's reporting from the time that includes quotes from Jason Palmer, I think is his name. He's a member on the Teamsters International Executive Board, and he's going to be running against Sean O'Brien, who recounted and he talked to the New York Times about a conversation that happened similar to this, but his characterization of it at the time, which was not contested by the Teamsters at the time either, he said that Kamala Harris, when she was leaving, said, "I'm confident I'm going to win with or without you. And your endorsement is not going to affect how I will treat you if I become president." Which is like, you know, I mean, that's totally, both recollections of that event, you know, seem pretty close to one another, but the New York Times John Palmer version of it is actually basically exactly what you would hope to see from a candidate, right? You would hope to see that they seem confident, and that they would make assurances that if you don't endorse, you know, that your non-endorsement of them will not hurt you, right? You know, they're not going to use the power that they might get if they're elected to hurt your members if you don't endorse them, right? That is like perfect candidate behavior. Now, but if it happened as the way that Sean O'Brien describes it, then that's, you know, like an affront to all of unions, basically. You know, I'm like a threatening kind of thing. And so I'm actually more inclined to kind of believe the John Palmer version of it, because Sean O'Brien just doesn't, if John Palmer's thing is true, then Sean O'Brien's is just leaving something out, right? It's kind of a lie by omission, which are easy lies to make. And so, you know, I'm kind of skeptical that it happened exactly as presented. But all this other stuff is still for sure a problem. And what he's about to say next is another huge political malpractice problem. Let's listen to this.
Was that at the conclusion of all these roundtables, we had media set up. So after conclusion of meeting with Trump, I did a press conference down in the lobby of my building. Well, Donald Trump did a press conference down in the lobby of my building after he spoke. The same offer was extended to both President Biden and Vice President Harris, and they refused. So you're meeting with the biggest labor organization that you want, and you've got an opportunity for media to question you about how you felt the meeting went and what you wanted to achieve, and you don't want to speak to the media. That's a problem. But Trump, to his credit, in our building, in our foyer, had a press conference. So
Now why would you not take the opportunity to do a press conference from the Teamsters headquarters? Like, that's crazy. When Trump was doing that press conference, now he says, no, Trump, to his credit, did the press conference. It's like, it's all win for Trump, and it's all win for Harris. Like, it's not like oh, kudos, you did a press conference from the union's headquarters. Like, that's all good for you. You don't get kudos to that. But that's crazy that you would give that up. That is insane. Why would you do that if you're Kamala Harris, especially knowing that you've got this whole narrative about maybe the Teamsters are going to endorse Trump, maybe the Teamsters don't like Kamala Harris very much? Well, doing a press conference from the Teamsters headquarters would be a great way to kind of nip some of those news cycles in the bud, right? I mean, that's just crazy. Why would you not do that? Ugh. It's so frustrating. I don't know. Anyway. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.